The national political conventions are a rite of presidential politics. But this year was special as the Democrats held their national convention in early September in Charlotte, the first major political convention ever held in North Carolina. The city raised and spent millions to show the Democrats a good time, and the Spring Oak Enterprise was there to see from the inside what a political convention is really like. Every convention attracts protests, and this year the Occupy Economic protesters set up camps in a city park near the convention area. Other protesters used their vehicles to display their unhappiness as they drove around town. But Charlotte had the streets all around the downtown devoted to the convention cordoned off completely. A multi-block rectangle anchored at one end by the Time Warner Cable Arena where evening sessions were held, and the Charlotte Convention Center on the other. The blocked-off area was patrolled by several thousand police, some on motorcycles and some squads on bicycles. A helicopter constantly patrolled overhead, and key access points were guided by teams of police and Secret Service. The 6,000 convention delegates and other party attendees were scattered in about 13,000 hotel rooms around the city. North Carolina delegates were housed in the Crown Plaza Hotel, and each morning had a delegation breakfast, hosted by different sponsors each day. At these breakfasts, delegates heard special speakers and their own state politicians, coordinated their scheduled activities for the day, and networked with each other. Among the Nash County delegates were Charles Johnson, Angela Bryant, and Gwen Wilkins from Rocky Mount. Party activist Mary Wells of Rocky Mount, attending her 4th convention, this year attended as a volunteer staff member for the state party.
Every Monday morning when I am at my desk in Chicago and we get the statistics back on how many conversations have occurred, how many doors have been knocked, how many phones have been called, how many people have been registered to vote, North Carolina blows away everyone. It is not even close. Whatever you're doing, please bottle it and let's send it someplace else too and share the wealth.
Y'all, everywhere I go, people that are coming here from all over the country are saying, we've never been to Charlotte, but we are coming back to North Carolina. They have had such a great time. And, I mean, it is infectious. The energy level, people are saying that this is so much better than what happened last week.
Ask over and over again, are we better all 4 years later? For those who have health care coverage who didn't have it, they're better off. Those who get health coverage with pre-existing conditions, better off. Children who still on their parents' insurance plan at 26, they're better off. The automotive industry is virtually gone. We convince ourselves, the Germans and Japanese can make cars better than we can make them. Now GM is #1 again. We're better off. 100,000 troops in Iraq, they're home now. They're better off. So we fight back to keep the dream alive. We will not go back by fear. And no matter what the obstructions are, the genius in Father President Barack Obama is just surviving with dignity in the face of such toxic attacks. The idea of declaring him illegitimate. You're a liar. You're not an American. You're not a Christian. You're not born here. You are a welfare president. You are a food stamp president. These knocks and so forth. We are better than that. We must not go back by fear and mean.
Fired up, clap, clap, ready to go. Clap, clap. Fired up, clap, clap, ready to go. Clap, clap. Fired up, clap, clap, ready to go.
Scores of city buses shuttled delegates among the hotel and convention site. When delegates arrived at the convention center, they were greeted by a long block of vendors hawking souvenirs, small groups of protesters, and occasionally a counter-protest.
Who is Lord of America and whose laws will reign? That's the question before us today. I'll answer it. Listen to this. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19.
Most daytime activities were held at the convention center. No one could enter without color-coded passes hung around their neck. But the huge multi-story convention center was packed with delegates and party officials, press, and guests. Charlotte volunteers were scattered throughout the building to answer questions and give assistance. Center ballrooms were set aside for a host of special interest caucus meetings. Delegates could enjoy free food at sponsored meals or receptions throughout the day. The convention center also had a fast food court for anyone who remained hungry, and a long corridor set aside for more vendors and more souvenirs. There were plenty of funny hats and clothing, and broadcast cameras were stationed along the hallways to capture them and interview delegates passing by. For the record, God was present at the convention. At least the convention included a prayer room. A special press briefing was held each day by party and Obama campaign officials.
Obviously, the highlight of tonight is going to be the president's speech, kind of the culmination of the week that we've all been looking forward to. Before that, the vice president will speak, and we'll have a slew of other speakers.
A couple of just cats and dogs. The president isn't doing a walkthrough today. He didn't do one this morning. He would have known. So there isn't one planned for this evening for his speech. Today he's been at his hotel working with close aides on just finalizing, fine-tuning the speech. Anyone who's covered him a long time, or anyone who's worked for him a long time knows that he always tweaks things, even if it's a word or two up until the end. So.
Anyone entering the space between the convention center and an arena had to undergo a full security search similar to airport security. Once outside the center, delegates and press could walk the approximate half-mile to the arena or catch an electric train shuttled back and forth. The Time Warner Cable Arena, normally the home of the Carolina Bobcats basketball team, holds 22,000 people. The gigantic lobby was always busy, especially as delegates arrived for the evening. The court floor seating the 6,000 delegates was open during the day, but carefully controlled in the evening. Concourses ringing the arena on several floors were open to reporters, who set up cameras all around the arena and interviewed delegates as they went by. Charlotte did a good job trying to accommodate and serve the 15,000 journalists who covered the convention. The Bobcat practice courts were turned into a huge press room with rows of tables with lamps and outlets for journalists to file their stories. The major news broadcast outlets occupied an entire floor of open-ended suites stretched around and above the convention floor, signs proclaiming this or that network. Anyone who looked up could see the broadcasters taping their reports, going over their notes, or even conducting a news show while the convention went on behind them. Rows of seated print journalists flanked the stage. Banks of photographers with long lenses and television cameras captured all the action on stage from the front. It rained hard for at least some part of every day. Plans to hold the last night of the convention in the outdoor Bank of America Stadium were prudently dropped the day before, since it also rained on the last day, making use of the stadium impossible. Disappointed volunteers and guests who had tickets to the stadium were given a special conference call to the president. One thing we learned, some of the media really don't know when to come out of the rain. Each night the convention itself opened with colors and the national anthem, played by Brandon Marsalis one night. Olympic athlete Gabrielle Douglas led the Pledge of Allegiance one night, and on the last night, former Arizona Representative Gabby Gifford, still recovering from a gunshot wound, made a surprising appearance to overwhelming cheers and led the pledge.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Each night included a variety of entertainment interspersed between the speeches. One of them was North Carolina's own James Taylor, whose rehearsal Thursday afternoon was every bit as entrancing as his performance that night.
But I'm from Carolina.
The music musical numbers of the entertainers were all loud and lively. Some had delegates dancing at their seats.
When I lose my will, you'll be right there to push me up there.
Each night included special presentations, including one featuring the Democratic women senators and another honoring veterans. Throughout all three sessions, convention organizers would come onto the floor and hand out signs and placards with appropriate messages the delegates could hold up and wave. One thing most observers noted was the high excitement level among delegates throughout the convention, no matter who was speaking or what was happening.
That wherever they serve,
on the second day of the convention, delegates did what they came to do. In the traditional roll call of states, one by one, the states made their speeches and cast their votes in the media spotlight.
Arkansas, home of Bill Clinton, Governor Mike Beebe. Balanced budgets, brighter futures, and an unending belief in a place called hope. Cast all 55 votes for President Barack Obama.
Illinois is proud to cast its 196 votes for a son of Illinois, President of the United States, and the next President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Ohio cast the winning ballots, and President Barama was declared the winner with cheers and electronic celebration.
Obama. To lead our nation forward.
And then the roll call went on, and states like North Carolina still had their moment in the spotlight.
North Carolina, you have 157 votes.
The great and sovereign state of North Carolina, the cradle of liberty, is delighted to host the Democratic Convention in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Madam Secretary, North Carolina, the state where our great Governor Beverly Perdue, our fantastic Senator Kay Hagan, where the weak grow strong and the strong grows great, where we will elect Walter Dalton, our next governor, where we voted for Barack Obama in 2008, where we will carry North Carolina again in 2012 to keep this recovery going, to keep our American dream alive. North Carolina proudly cast 152 votes for Barack Obama, President of these United States.
On television, the convention hall looked full. But what viewers don't see is that after each state cast their votes, most delegates went home. By the time the nomination was announced, more than half the convention floor was empty. Most of all, a national convention is speeches, as many as 30 of them each night from 5 to 11 o'clock, with the major speeches starting after 10. Carefully choreographed hour by hour, the speakers ranged from Democratic senators and representatives, governors and mayors, administration officials, firefighters and admirals, business leaders and workers, union leaders and Hispanic immigration activists, celebrities, guests like Sandra Fluke, and even the head of Planned Parenthood. They all spoke with passion, sometimes with biting humor from their own perspectives. But it was clear they all had the same talking points. The speakers extolled the president's record, tore apart the Republican alternatives, and made special appeals to various constituencies: women, veterans, seniors, Hispanics, and gay and lesbians who want to marry. But they all also had an overriding message: save the middle class and build the nation's prosperity upon its success.
Live up to those first 3 words of our Constitution, we the people. I love that phrase. I really do. So much because throughout our country's history, we've expanded the meaning of that phrase to include more and more of us. And that's what it means to move forward. And that is what this election is about.
And after more than 10 years without justice for thousands of Americans murdered on 9/11, after Mitt Romney said it would be naive to go into Pakistan to pursue the terrorists, it took President Obama, against the advice of many, to give that order and finally rid this earth of Osama bin Laden. Ask Osama bin Laden if he is better off now than he was 4 years ago.
Over the last 6 months, I've seen what these 2 futures look like. And 6 months from now, we're all going to be living in one future or the other. But only one. A country where our president either has our back or turns his back.
Mitt Romney proudly wrote an op-ed entitled, "Let Detroit Go Bankrupt." You know, if he had had his way, devastation would have cascaded from Michigan to Ohio and across the nation. Mitt Romney never saw the point of building something when he could profit by tearing it down. If Mitt was Santa Claus, he would fire the reindeer and outsource the elves.
So Mr. Romney and Mr. Ryan are campaigning for women's votes by saying that women need their help. Okay, this is coming from 2 men who are committed to ending insurance coverage for birth control, who would turn women's health care decisions over to our bosses, and who won't even stand up for equal pay for women. Okay, as my grandmother back in Texas would have said, any more help from Mitt Romney, and I'm going to have to take in ironing. Who's on our side.
The fact is, we don't have to guess what Mitt Romney would have done if he were president, because he told us. He said we should let foreclosures, and I quote, hit the bottom. So the market could, I quote, run its course. Run its course. That's not leadership. Doing nothing while the middle class is hurting. That's not leadership. Loose regulations and lax enforcement. That's not leadership. That's abandoning our middle class.
One major speech claimed the spotlight each night. The first night belonged to Michelle Obama, who combined the task of humanizing her husband with strong political appeals. The Democrats loved her.
Just the way he was. You see, even back then, when Barack was a senator and a presidential candidate, to me, he was still the guy who picked me up for our dates in a car that was so rusted out. I could actually see the pavement going by in a hole in the passenger side door. He was the guy whose proudest possession was a coffee table he found in a dumpster. When it comes to the health of our families, Barack refused to listen to all those folks who told him to leave health reform for another day, another president. He didn't care whether it was the easy thing to do politically. No, that's not how he was raised. He cared that it was the right thing to do. should be able to afford their medicine. Our kids should be able to see a doctor when they're sick. And no one in this country should ever go broke because of an accident or an illness.
The second night belonged to former President Bill Clinton. With folksy charm, mocking humor, and simple, plain speech, he demolished Republican arguments against the president and his policies, defended the Democrats' plan for prosperity, and stressed we're all in this together to promote growth and broadly shared prosperity.
Don't you ever forget when you hear them talking about this, that Republican economic policy quadrupled the national debt before I took office, in the 12 years before I took office. And double the debt in the 8 years after I left. Because it defied arithmetic. It was a highly inconvenient thing for them in our debates that I was just a country boy from Arkansas, and I came from a place where people still thought 2 and 2 was 4. It's arithmetic. We simply cannot afford to give the reins of government to someone who will double down on trickle down. And here's what I want the people at home to think about. When times are tough and people are frustrated and angry and hurting and uncertain, the politics of constant conflict may be good. But what is good politics does not necessarily work in the real world. What works in the real world is cooperation. Unfortunately, the faction that now dominates the Republican Party doesn't see it that way. They think government is always the enemy, they're always right, and compromise is weakness. Just in the last couple of elections, they defeated 2 distinguished Republican senators because they dared to cooperate with Democrats on issues important to the future of the country, even national security. They beat a Republican congressman with almost 100% voting record on every conservative score because he said he realized he did not have to hate the president to disagree with him. Boy, that was a non-starter, and they threw him out. One of the main reasons we ought to re-elect President Obama is that he is still committed to constructive cooperation. I want Barack Obama to be the next president of the United States. Nominate him to be the standard bearer of the Democratic Party. In Tampa a few days ago, we heard a lot of talk about how the president and the Democrats don't really believe in free enterprise and individual initiative. How we want everybody to be dependent on the government. How bad we are for the economy. This Republican narrative, its alternative universe, says that every one of us in this room who amounts to anything, we're all completely self-made. One of the greatest chairmen the Democratic Party ever had, Bob Strauss, used to say that every politician wants every voter to believe he was born in the log cabin he built himself. But, as Strauss then admitted, it ain't so. We Democrats, we think the country works better with a strong middle class, with real opportunities for poor folks to work their way into it, with a relentless focus on the future, with business and government actually working together to promote growth and broadly shared prosperity. You see, we believe that we're all in this together is a far better philosophy than you're on your own. When we vote in this election, we'll be deciding what kind of country we want to live in. If you want
a winner-take-all, you're on your own society, you should support the Republican ticket. But if you want a country of shared opportunities and shared responsibility, we're all in this together society, you should vote for Barack Obama and Joe Biden.
The final night of the convention, of course, belonged to the president. His acceptance speech likewise defended his record, ridiculed the opposition, acknowledged his shortcomings, redefined his call for change as coming from the American people, insisted that he still had a strong hope for America's future, and called Americans to join in working towards it.
We are making things again. I've met workers in Detroit and Toledo who feared they'd never build another American car. And today they can't build them fast enough because we reinvented a dying auto industry that's back on the top of the world. Independent experts say that my plan would cut our deficit by $4 trillion. And last summer I worked with Republicans in Congress to cut $1 billion in spending because those of us who believe government can be a force for good should work harder than anyone to reform it so that it's leaner, more efficient, and more responsive to the American people. I want to reform the tax code so that it's simple, fair, and ask the wealthiest households to pay higher taxes on incomes over $250,000. The same rate we had when Bill Clinton was president, the same rate we had when our economy created nearly 23 million new jobs, the biggest surplus in history, and a whole lot of millionaires to boot. Now, I'm still eager to reach an agreement based on the principles of my bipartisan debt commission. No party has a monopoly on wisdom. No democracy works without compromise. I want to get this done, and we can get it done. But when Governor Romney and his friends in Congress tell us we can somehow lower our deficits by spending trillions more on new tax breaks for the wealthy, well, what Bill Flynn call it? You do the arithmetic. You do the math. To give up their deductions for owning a home or raising their kids just to pay for another millionaire's tax cut. Program to eliminate health insurance for millions of Americans who are poor and elderly or disabled. Also, those with the most can pay less. I'm not going along with that. And strengthen Medicare for the long haul. But we'll do it by reducing the cost of health care, not by asking seniors to pay thousands of dollars more. And we will keep the promise of Social Security by taking the responsible steps to strengthen it, not by turning it over to Wall Street. We don't want handouts for people who refuse to help themselves, and we certainly don't want bailouts for banks that break the rules. We don't think the government can solve all of our problems, but we don't think that the government is the source of all of our problems. Or corporations, or unions, or immigrants, or gays, or any other group or choice to blame for our problems. Because America, we understand that this democracy is ours. We, the people, recognize that we have responsibilities as well as rights. That our destinies are bound together. That a freedom which asks only what's in it for me, a freedom without a commitment to others, a freedom without love or charity or duty or patriotism is unworthy of our founding ideals and those who died in their defense. As citizens, we understand that America is not about what can be done for us, it's about what can be done by us, together. Through the hard and frustrating but necessary work of self-government. That's what we believe. So you see, the election 4 years ago wasn't about me. It was about you. My fellow citizens, you were the change. Only you have the power to move us forward.
We the people! We the people!
You know, I recognize that times have changed since I first spoke to this convention. Times have changed, and so have I. I'm no longer Mr. Candidate. I'm the president. And that means I know what it means to send young Americans into battle, where I've held in my arms mothers and fathers of those who didn't return. I've shared the pain of families who lost their homes and the frustration of workers who lost their jobs. If the critics are right that I've made all my decisions based on polls, then I must not be very good at reading. And while I'm very proud of what we've achieved together, I'm far more mindful of my own failings, knowing exactly what Lincoln meant when he said, I have been driven to my knees many times by the overwhelming conviction that I had no place else to go. I have never been more hopeful about America. Not because I'm naive about the magnitude of our challenges. I'm hopeful because of you. If you share that hope with me, I ask you tonight for your vote. Yes, our path is harder, but it leads to a better place. Yes, our road is longer, but we travel it together. We don't turn back. We leave no one behind. We pull each other up. We gain strength from our victories, and we learn from our mistakes, but we keep our eyes fixed on our
After the speech, the convention ended with traditional exuberance, the delegates cheering, music blaring, confetti blown upwards into the arena, and electronic fireworks as a backdrop, as the president and vice president and their families came onto the stage for hugs, handshakes, and lots of waves to the delegates. Then, out of the spotlight, the convention chairman presided over the motion to adjourn, and North Carolina's first political convention, a success in Charlotte, became history.
God bless the Democratic Party, and most importantly, God bless the United States of America.
Ken Ripley, Spring Hope Enterprise.